In this video, we're gonna find you the best budget lens for sports videography. Hey, what's going on? My name is Peter Sorellis. I'm a videographer and editor from Toronto, Canada. I specialize in sports videography. And in this video, we're gonna go through and find the best budget lens for sports videography. This is specifically for Sony cameras because I shoot on Sony. So we're gonna be talking about a whole bunch of lenses within that like $200-300 all the way up to $1,000 price range that you could potentially use for sports videography when you're just starting out. I'm only going to be speaking on lenses that I've actually used, since obviously if I haven't used the lens, then I can't tell you about it with a good amount of knowledge. So there's going to be some lenses that are off of this list, but I've used a good amount of lenses in this range, and I think I'm going to be able to give you a pretty good picture of what your options look like when you get your first camera and you're looking to get a lens and you're interested in shooting sports videos. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to make a decision on what lens you want to get first to use your camera to start making these sports videos. All right, so let's get into our first lens, which is the Sony 28-70mm f3.5 to 5.6. This is also known as the kit lens. And look, I'm not gonna bash the kit lens, okay? Like, everyone gets the kit lens at some point, and the kit lens is a good lens. Like, it's versatile. 28-70 is a pretty good zoom range, and it's cheap. It's $400 US, and like, if you're just starting out, maybe you bought a camera for $1,000, you don't necessarily want to spend twice the amount of your camera on one lens. So you can get the kit lens, it lets you get an image, and that's pretty solid. Look, it is a Sony lens, and it's actually pretty sharp, like in the middle at least. So you can make good images with it. I don't think that shooting on the kit lens is going to be like prohibitive to making a good video. You definitely can still make a good video on that lens. It does have a variable aperture from f3.5 to f5.6, which means that when you're at 28mm, your aperture is going to be f3.5, which lets in a fair amount of light. And as you zoom in, the aperture is slowly going to stop down to like f4 and f5, and eventually it's going to get down to f5.6 by the time you get to that 70mm mark. So you're going to see like a big decrease in exposure as you zoom the lens in. And this is going to mean that you have to go back in post-production and lift the exposure of certain shots so that you don't have shots that are brighter and some that are darker. And of course, when you lift the exposure of a shot that is darker, this is going to introduce more noise. So not ideal if you're trying to always get the cleanest image, to know that you're going to have less clean images when you're punched in than you will when you're zoomed out. But if you need to produce an image with your new camera, and you want it to look decent, and you only have $400, I don't think the kit lens is a bad option. It's definitely a good place to start. You can kind of experiment with it. You can do vlogs, you can do product videos, you can shoot sports videos, see what you're interested in, and then buy a more specialized lens down the road. All right, next let's talk about another lens within that same focal range, the Tamron 28-75 f2.8. That's actually the lens that I'm shooting on right now. So if you like what this image looks like, then you'll know that you can produce a good image using this lens. It's just about as versatile as the Sony 28-70 that we just talked about. You can still shoot product videos, you can shoot commercial stuff, you can shoot interviews or talking heads like I'm doing right now. You can shoot sports videos, of course. I've used this lens to shoot sports videos quite a bit, and I still continue to use it to this day to shoot sports videos. And honestly, this lens has performed just as good, if not better, than every Sony lens that I have. The autofocus is on point, and like it pretty much never misses, and it looks pretty sharp. This lens that you're looking at right now, like you can see how sharp it is. My Sony lenses aren't more sharp than this. Like, this is a good image for me. There's a bit of vignetting on the sides, but like, what are you gonna do for under $1,000? It's really not that noticeable. And the lens does feel a little bit cheaply built. It is a little light. It's mostly plastic. But at the end of the day, I really just care about the result that's coming out of the lens. And for me, I feel confident using this lens to produce pretty much any type of video and using it in any type of environment, especially given it's an f2.8 and has really strong low light capabilities. So if you have $800-900, I think that this lens is a really good bet. It's in my kit for a reason, and you would not be doing yourself a disservice by putting it into yours. All right, the next lens that we're gonna talk about is the Sony 18-105mm f4 lens. This lens is definitely the most versatile that we've talked about so far. With a focal length from 18mm all the way to 105mm, you're able to shoot really wide shots and shoot stuff like real estate if you really wanted to. You can shoot talking heads, you can shoot product videos, you can shoot landscapes and like street photography. But at 105mm, you're also able to punch in on someone and get a close-up. So if you're shooting sports, you can actually like shoot down to the other end of the court with some level of effectiveness. You can shoot close-ups of people when they're close to you. So it's a really versatile lens in that sense. It also has like this power zoom thing on the side. So instead of having to zoom the lens out, which you still can do. There's also a button where if you push it up, it gets tighter, and if you push it down, then the lens zooms wider, which is nice for video people if you want like a smooth zoom in or a smooth zoom out. It also has stabilization, so if you're gonna be handheld and you're gonna zoom in all the way to 105 millimeters, then you get like some extra stabilization from the lens, which I think is really good and honestly quite necessary at that focal range. For $650, I think that this lens is also a better value than the kit lens if you're torn between the two. But the one thing that you have to know about this lens is that it is made for APS-C sensor cameras. So if you have like an A6000, A6300, A6500, something that has a crop sensor on it, then you're good to go with this lens. But if you have something like what I have, an A7 III, or maybe you have a newer camera, an A7S III, maybe you pre-ordered the A7 IV, then you're not gonna wanna get this lens because you're gonna have to punch into APS-C mode and you won't be able to use the full sensor of your camera. And like there's times and places where it makes sense to punch into APS-C mode, but if you're buying a lens where you always have to be punched into APS-C and you have a full frame camera, then why do you have a full frame camera? You can just buy an APS-C camera that performs great for cheaper and use the full sensor on that camera and not have to pay for full frame glass and all the other things that come with owning a more expensive full frame camera. But I digress. The 18-105 has an acceptable level of sharpness. It is not the sharpest lens I've ever used. You're probably looking at some video footage of it right now, but you can definitely make good videos with it. And for $650 and the amount of versatility that you get with this lens, I think that it's a really good value buy if you're in the market for an APS-C lens. The last lens that we're going to talk about is the Sony 70-200mm f4, and this lens is $1,500 US. I understand that that is out of the price range of this $1,000 limit that we've set for like budget lenses. But if you're gonna get this lens secondhand, you can probably scoop it up for about $1,000. I know B&H, when I looked online, had it used for like $1,100, and you can probably get it cheaper on Craigslist if you're feeling adventurous and willing to go that route. But either way, it wouldn't be a real sports videography lens review video if I didn't at least mention 170-200, because the 70-200 really is like that prime focal length for sports videography. You can't shoot like vlogs on it. You're not gonna be able to shoot real estate on it, and you probably can't get through a full commercial shoot using only a 70-200mm. But the 70-200mm f4, in my opinion, is like the best lens you can get for sports videography on the Sony system for like under $2,000. And it's not even a question, like hands down, it's the best. It has like pretty much all the focal lengths that you would need to shoot most sports. You can shoot basketball for sure, because I shoot basketball with it all the time and it's my #1 go-to lens. You can shoot sports like soccer and football on it that are on a field. Even though you might want something that's a little longer, you can get by with a 70-200. You can shoot, I don't know, volleyball, baseball, like all of those sports fall within the focal length that a 70-200 can reach, either on a full frame camera or by punching into APS-C mode. The 70-200mm f4 also has stabilization in the lens, which I think is huge if you're gonna be shooting at a telephoto focal length. If you're gonna be handheld, especially if you don't have stabilization on that lens, it's gonna be really wobbly and shaky. I know there's another competing lens, the Tamron 70-180mm, I believe, f2.8, that goes for around $1,200. And honestly, I wouldn't even consider this lens for sports videography because I like shooting handheld, and if I'm gonna hold that lens in my hand, it's gonna be really shaky because that lens doesn't have any stabilization whatsoever in it. And if I'm shooting at like 180mm, I know there's gonna be little micro jitters in my footage if I don't have that extra little help of stabilization. And I wanna be able to shoot handheld. I want to be mobile when I'm shooting sports videos. That's something that's really important to me. So I won't buy a telephoto lens that doesn't have stabilization in it. So for me, the extra few $100s to step up to the 70-200 f4 from Sony natively with the stabilization versus the Tamron is well worth it. The 70-200mm f4 is also very sharp in my experience using it. It's my most frequently used lens, as I've said, and that's because the image that it produces looks really, really good in my opinion. I love the compression to 200mm, the subjects stay really sharp. The autofocus performance on this lens is exceptional. I actually used in one game the 70-200mm f4 for the first half of the game, and then I used the 70-200mm f2.8 Mark I from Sony for the second half of the game. And I actually liked the 70-200mm f4 more because I found that the autofocus performance on the f4 was actually better and faster than the f2.8 Mark I. And the f4 is so much lighter than the f2.8 Mark I. It was much easier for me to get around with it. My arms didn't get tired. and I was able to shoot with it for the whole half really comfortably, where I found myself kind of struggling with the f2.8, and sometimes the autofocus would go bad and I wouldn't be able to start recording for a few seconds. And sometimes I would get tired and not be able to like move the camera as fast, because you have to hold this thing for a whole half of basketball, which is quite a long time to have a camera in your hand. So I would actually pick the cheaper f4 over Sony's more expensive f2.8 counterpart, at least the Mark 1. I haven't tried the Mark 2 yet, if I had to pick a lens for sports videography. I feel like it's very important for me to re-emphasize that on this 70-200mm, you're not gonna be able to vlog. It's gonna be difficult for you to produce talking heads and YouTube videos like this. You're probably not gonna be able to shoot like product videos, and you might struggle with some corporate stuff. So if you're a beginner, and you're looking to get one lens, this might not be the lens for you, because I highly recommend, at least, that when you're just starting out, you try shooting a whole bunch of different stuff. You get good by doing a lot of different types of videos and finding out what you like, and then you specialize later. And the 70-200mm is gonna limit you to certain things like, I don't know, nature photography, and you can maybe do some travel stuff with it, and obviously sports, like we've been talking about. So if you're looking for one lens that's gonna do everything for you, the 70-200mm f4 probably isn't it. If you must stay under $1,000 and you don't like the idea of buying used, the 70-200mm f4 probably isn't for you. But if you're willing to push that price range a little bit, you need a really good sports videography lens, and you don't want to spend more than max $1,500. The 70-200mm f4 is awesome, and I would definitely recommend that you give it a serious look. But anyways, that's gonna be all for this video. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, then please make sure to subscribe to my channel, because I post videography and video editing tips and tutorial videos similar to this one on a regular basis, and I would love to have you around for those. And if you had any questions, any concerns, or something that I missed in this video, then please let me know down in the comments. I would love to have a discussion with you down there and clarify anything that I can for you. Anyways, that's gonna be all for this video. So until next time, peace.